I'm Dom Smart. I'm a director at UK plugin developer Devious Machines, programmer of audio software. I've also previously been a sound designer in the games business and also a musician. I was always interested in music first. I came from quite a musical family. I was lucky enough to have some music lessons when I was younger. And then as soon as I got hold of a computer and found out you could make music with it, I just was absolutely hooked on that. So I suppose all the way through school I was quite fixated on electronic music. I initially thought maybe I would go into the studio recording business and went to university at Surrey University, took the Tom Meister degree there. Initially with the idea that I would get into being a sound engineer going into recording studios, because I liked the idea of recording, being behind big mixing desks and so on. That all looked very, very glamorous to me. I suppose at the same time, almost by accident really, a job came up working at Electronic Arts, the big games company. So I went for an interview there, and it wasn't something I'd initially even planned to get into, but actually almost by accident ended up working there. When I went to the place and saw what they did, I thought this looks really interesting. I've always been quite interested in the technical side of things, I suppose. Not so much programming in the beginning, but I was always interested in sort of working out how to program samplers, how to make my own sounds and so on. So after I graduated university, Electronic Arts invited me back to actually have a proper job with them, and someone fresh out of university, the prospect of a proper pay packet was quite appealing, and I quite enjoyed the work, so I went and worked there. But I mean, in parallel to that, I'd always been making music and carried on making music in all my spare time, and I sort of developed a parallel career really whilst I was working the game stuff as a day job. I was producing on weekends, got into DJing, going out doing that, and I suppose after a number of years that I started to get reasonably enjoy a certain amount of success with that, so I probably left that job in the late 2000s to try and make a go of being a professional artist for a bit, which I suppose is kind of the dream of everybody, or most people who are into music production in some sense. And I did that for a while, and I'm glad I did that for a while, but I guess it didn't turn out to be a sustainable career for me. I think making underground electronic music, there's always going to be a bit of a tension between making a living and doing what you love, unless you're one of the few people who's fortunate and driven and talented enough to make it to the top of the pyramid, I suppose, where you're really really making a career of it. After I left Electronic Arts, I found I had enough experience and connections that I was able to do that on a freelance basis. So for quite a while I was alternating between taking freelance contracts to do the video games work, which I would find would pay me reasonably well, and then taking time out to do music, which it paid me a bit, it paid me less well, but that was kind of more my passion, I suppose. So I found for quite a while actually, doing the two things enabled me to carve out time to make music without having to worry so much about the financial aspect. And then later on, I suppose that I also got more into doing sound design for the music tech business, primarily Novation actually. I was doing patches for a bunch of their synthesizers. The last one I worked on was the Novation Peak. And honestly, actually most of the opportunities that have come to me during my career have been through people I've known or previously worked with in the past. It's hard to overstate the importance of just networking and keeping in touch with people. Some of the work I was doing in the games business was, especially in the later years, more towards the technical sound design side of things. So I spent a lot of time talking to programmers and understanding what went on. I never really coded myself, but did do a bit of scripting, for example. Also picked up by osmosis quite a bit about the process of software development, just how projects are managed and designed and that kind of thing. But then what eventually happened was I found myself working at a smaller company where effectively I had to get my hands dirty and do a lot of the actual implementation coding myself, because the company was small, the programmers were busy, and I ended up just diving in and doing it and thought, well, I could actually probably program if I set my mind to it. And after leaving that company, I decided just to sit down with some books, learn C++, and just try my hand at making some simple audio plugins. And then fortuitously at that moment, I was introduced to a mutual friend to my now friend and business partner Jim, who at the time was working for Loopmasters on their Loop Cloud application. We just geeked out over audio together. I showed him some of the effects I'd prototyped in Reactor, because by then I was building my own machines to use in music production and sound. And yeah, we just talked about turning some of these ideas into plugins. Jim had already released a couple of plugins through Plugin Boutique already by that point, so yeah, he was a good mentor at that position, and you know, I brought my audio knowledge to the table, and yeah, very quickly we just decided to go into business together and set up Devious Machines and released our first plugin, Texture, about a year later. I find if I do the same thing for too long without any new challenges, I just tend to get bored, and it was actually really refreshing to just be doing something completely different. And I think to anybody who gets in that position where they just feel like they're getting stuck in a grind, then trying something new is probably the best thing one could do. But I do realise it's hard when, you know, everybody has to earn a living and you have to be able to carve out space to, you know, experiment now and again. Yes, I would fully advocate trying new things, and yeah, not being afraid to take a leap into the unknown, but also not expecting everything to work out in fame and fortune necessarily. Like I suppose being an artist or a creative person is always going to be fraught with difficulty like this, and you know, for many years, and it still is, music's still my passion, but I guess I came to the realisation that it was probably never going to be a mainstay of my career financially, and it turns out that's okay, because it's provided me with a wealth of other, you know, worldly and professional experience that has been useful in other ways. So I think everybody has to just find their own way through life, and there is no formula to it, I think.